For years, Last Man Standing was the show that brought families together every Friday night.
For 9 seasons, one Baxter family sitcom survived a shocking network cancellation, a total rebirth on a different channel, and more secret recastings than almost any other show on television. 2 different actresses played the same daughter without anyone officially explaining why. A future Golden Globe nominee quietly vanished from the credits while still appearing on screen. And the man who created the show once said he was ready to defy Disney itself just to bring back a character from the 1990s. If you only remember the jokes and the arguments around the Baxter family dinner table, you're missing the real story, because almost everything that happened behind the cameras on Last Man Standing was stranger than what happened in front of them. Tim Allen was not looking for a new sitcom when Last Man Standing came along. After Home Improvement ended in 1999, he had spent years turning down network offers, including one from CBS reportedly worth around $1 million per episode. He did not need the money, and he was not interested in playing a version of Tim Taylor all over again. When producer Jack Burdett first pitched him the role of Mike Baxter, a marketing director at a Colorado outdoor sporting goods store trying to hold his own in a house full of women, Allen said no. He said no again, and he said no a third time. What eventually changed his mind was not the script alone, it was control. Allen agreed to come back to television only if he could also serve as an executive producer with real influence over where the show went creatively, and that arrangement mattered more than anyone realized at the time, because it gave him the freedom to push the show toward political commentary in a way few other sitcom stars could. ABC had ambitions for Last Man Standing that went beyond just another family comedy. Executives wanted something closer to a modern version of All in the Family, a show built around a stubborn, old-fashioned father whose views could be challenged by the people who loved him most. They placed it on Friday nights, historically one of the toughest slots in television, betting that Allen's star power alone could pull in an audience where other shows had failed. It worked. The premiere in October 2011 drew more than 13 million viewers, giving ABC its biggest comedy debut since Modern Family 2 years earlier. The show settled in and stayed strong, regularly topping 8 million viewers a week and performing well with younger audiences, a rare feat for anything airing on a Friday night. Which is exactly why so many people were confused when ABC pulled the plug in 2017, and even more confused by the string of cast exits that had already been happening for years before that final decision. The first sign that something unusual was going on came almost immediately. In Season 1, the oldest Baxter daughter, Kristen, was played by a young actress named Alexandra Krosny. Kristen was a teenage single mother raising her son Boyd while living back at home with her parents, and Krosny brought a mix of sharp humor and real vulnerability to the role that a lot of viewers connected with. Then, right after the first season wrapped, ABC quietly let her go. TV Line broke the news that she had been dismissed for creative reasons, though the network never gave a detailed public explanation at the time. The truth that eventually came out was a little more specific than simple creative differences. Producers wanted to age the character up and rework the family dynamic, and there was also an odd casting detail nagging at them behind the scenes. Even though Kristen was supposed to be the oldest sister, Krosny was actually younger in real life than Molly Ephraim, who played the middle daughter, Mandy. Bringing in Amanda Fuller, who was several years older, solved that problem and let the show restructure the sibling order to make more sense on screen. Fuller stepped into the role starting in Season 2 and remained there for the rest of the series, eventually becoming one of the most consistent presences in the cast. Kristen's story came with its own subplot that caused just as much of a stir. Her son's father, a character named Ryan, was introduced in a December 2011 Christmas episode played by 19-year-old Nick Jonas, fresh off his run with the Jonas Brothers. The character was written as a nervous, immature kid who had run off and abandoned his responsibilities, and the appearance generated exactly the kind of buzz you would expect from stunt casting a pop star. But it was only ever meant to be a one-off. When Tim Doyle took over as showrunner heading into Season 2, he wanted Ryan to be more than a punchline about a deadbeat teenage dad. He wanted a character who could actually go toe-to-toe with Mike Baxter on political and social issues, someone with more depth and staying power. Jonas did not return for that version of the role. Instead, actor Jordan Masterson, known at the time for his part in the sitcom Greek, took over as Ryan starting in Season 2 and stayed with the show for the rest of its run. Masterson's version of the character grew over time from a scared kid into someone genuinely capable of debating Mike. And later seasons even gave Ryan his own small business running a legal cannabis shop, which became a recurring source of jokes about how thoroughly he had turned into the kind of entrepreneur Mike secretly respected. The recasting pattern that started with Kristen and Ryan in those first 2 seasons set the tone for a show that would keep quietly swapping actors for the rest of its run, but nothing shook the fanbase quite like what happened in May 2017. ABC announced it was canceling Last Man Standing after 6 seasons, and the announcement blindsided almost everyone involved, including the cast. This was not a struggling show being put out of its misery. It was ABC's second most-watched comedy that season, trailing only Modern Family, and it was outperforming most of the network's Friday night lineup by a wide margin. The timing raised eyebrows immediately, because only a couple of months earlier, Allen had gone on Jimmy Kimmel Live and joked that being a conservative in Hollywood sometimes felt like being in 1930s Germany, a comment that drew plenty of criticism. Given that Mike Baxter's outspoken conservative politics were one of the show's defining traits, and that Allen's own political leanings were well known, a lot of fans assumed the two things were connected. ABC's official explanation was different. Entertainment president Channing Dungey told reporters that the decision came down to business and scheduling reasons, explaining that the network was moving away from comedy on Friday nights entirely and shifting toward genre programming instead. She said she used the same criteria for Last Man Standing that she used for other canceled shows that same season, and she directly denied that Allen's politics played any role in the outcome. Allen himself was not fully convinced. Months later, in an interview on Norm Macdonald's podcast, he said he still did not know why ABC made the call and suggested that maybe there was something uniquely uncomfortable, in his words, about a funny, likable conservative on network television. Both explanations exist in the public record, and neither side ever fully proved the other wrong. What is clear is that money was also part of the equation. ABC did not own the show outright. It was produced by 20th Century Fox Television, and the network had been trimming licensing costs on several aging series it did not fully control that same year. Whatever the real mix of reasons, the fan reaction was enormous. A petition calling for the show's return gathered hundreds of thousands of signatures within days. Fans flooded social media with hashtags demanding the show come back. Some reportedly even mailed toy tools to ABC's offices as a nod to Mike Baxter's handyman persona, and supporters paid for billboards in major cities pushing for a revival. Even politicians weighed in, with some public figures suggesting the cancellation looked politically motivated. The cast reacted publicly too. Allen tweeted that he felt stunned and blindsided by a network he had called home for 6 years. Nancy Travis, who played his wife Vanessa, thanked fans for their loyalty. Behind the outrage, though, the cast was already starting to scatter. Some of the younger actors did not wait around to see if a revival would ever happen, and that decision would end up reshaping the show completely when it eventually did come back. That comeback took nearly a year to arrange. Fox, which already had ties to the show through its production company, ended up picking it up for a new season, announcing the revival in May 2018 with a premiere date set for that September. The tight turnaround meant writers had only a matter of weeks to prepare new scripts, and the production team had to rebuild the original set from scratch because it had already been dismantled after the ABC cancellation. Fox invested heavily in bringing the show back, and the bet paid off in the ratings, with the revival premiere drawing a strong audience and the show settling in as one of the network's most reliable comedies for the next several seasons. But not everyone came back. Molly Ephraim, who had played Mandy for all 6 seasons on ABC, believed the show was truly finished when it was canceled in 2017, so she moved on and booked other work almost immediately, taking roles in projects like Man-Seeking Woman and Halt and Catch Fire. By the time Fox's revival came together roughly a year later, she was already committed elsewhere and could not return. Executive producer Matt Berry later explained it simply, saying that once the show was canceled, Ephraim got involved in other things, and by the time it came back, she was not able to do it. Rather than recast someone who resembled her, producers deliberately went in a different direction. They cast Molly McCook, an actress who looked nothing like Ephraim, and the show leaned into the difference instead of hiding it, even working a few jokes about it into the early episodes of the revival. Fans did not take it well at first. The hashtag #NotMyMandy spread quickly after McCook's debut in Season 7, and Ephraim reportedly stepped away from social media for a while in the aftermath. McCook has said in interviews that she never tried to imitate Ephraim's performance, choosing instead to build her own version of the character, one who leaned harder into Mandy's love of fashion and her ambitions as a designer, along with more serious storylines involving her marriage and a difficult pregnancy. Over time, particularly through emotional scenes opposite Alan, McCook won over a good portion of the audience that had initially rejected her. Kaitlyn Dever's departure followed a completely different path, and it turned out to be one of the more remarkable side stories in the whole show's history. Dever played Eve, the youngest Baxter daughter, from the very beginning. Unlike her castmates, she also assumed the show was over after the 2017 cancellation. She spent that gap year building an increasingly serious film career, eventually landing a lead role in the acclaimed comedy Booksmart alongside Beanie Feldstein and starring in the Netflix miniseries Unbelievable, a performance that earned her nominations for both a Golden Globe and a BAFTA. Those opportunities made it impossible for her to return to Last Man Standing as a full-time cast member once the Fox revival happened, so the writers found a clever workaround instead of writing her out completely. Eve was sent off to the Air Force Academy, a storyline that let her appear only occasionally without breaking the show's continuity. Showrunner Kevin Abbott has said the goal was always to bring Dever back whenever her schedule allowed, and she did keep returning for guest appearances across the final 3 seasons, including a memorable episode built specifically around her limited availability that focused on Eve's relationship with her nieces. The COVID-19 pandemic added another layer of difficulty in the show's later seasons, since quarantine requirements made every one of Dever's appearances logistically complicated, and production reportedly had to abandon at least one planned episode involving her because scheduling simply could not be made to work. Despite becoming one of the busier young actresses in Hollywood, with credits that eventually included Dopesick and the 2nd season of HBO's The Last of Us, Dever made sure to appear in the series finale, closing out the character she had played since childhood. In May 2020, Fox announced that Last Man Standing would end after its 9th season, even though the show was still performing well, averaging over 8 million viewers per episode and remaining one of the network's highest-rated comedies.